When my wife and I bought our first house, an old Victorian in the 50s, we heard what sounded like baby footsteps running down the hallway upstairs almost every night. There were other strange sounds too. My wife mentioned it to some of the neighbours, and they suggested it might just be peacocks on the roof. The house backed onto a conservation area where wild peacocks lived. They would sometimes fly up onto the roofs of neighbouring houses. This idea was quite realistic, so we stopped worrying and got used to the noise, eventually just ignoring it. Less than a year later, our son was born. He had an unusual ability. When he was bored, he would balance all of his toys on top of other toys and make them spin. He would literally find the center of balance of different objects and walk around the room in circles, giving each one a gentle nudge to make them spin. It was the weirdest and coolest thing I had ever seen. When he was 2 or 3, we noticed that he was talking in his room at night. One night I asked who he was talking to. He said, "Tracy." I asked who Tracy was, and he said, "The girl who lives in the wall. She's usually nice, but sometimes she scares me." He described a girl with brown hair in a yellow dress who played with him and sometimes woke him up at night. But it didn't seem to bother him, just frightened him sometimes. He would talk about her from time to time, but that was normal. A couple of years later, we built an addition to the house and moved our bedroom downstairs, swapping rooms with our son. Our son was now living in our old room and was almost ready to graduate from his crib to a regular one. He was always a deep sleeper, but he cried in that room almost every night. One day, we heard a loud bang in his room, followed by a scream, and rushed in, thinking he had fallen out of bed. But he was sitting on the other side of the room. I calmed him down and put him back to bed, but the next night it happened again. We decided to switch rooms back and everything was back to normal. We started looking into the history of the house, but we couldn't find anything about missing little girls or anyone named Tracy living there. Eventually our son stopped talking about it, and a few years later I got a job at a different company and we moved. The house sat empty for a few months, and a neighbour across the street called my wife one day and said that about a week after we moved out, she thought she saw what looked like our daughter looking out the window. She waved at her and then remembered that we didn't live there anymore and we didn't have a daughter.